You're listening to the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. Now here's your hosts, Kevin, Derek, and Alex.
Alrighty, welcome on into the latest from the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. I am Derek, and I'm joined, as always, by your co-hosts, Kevin and Alex. Gentlemen, we are like T-minus almost 48 hours from, actually less than that from the 2022 draft. How are we doing?
Good for that very reason. Like we are, like you said, less than 48 hours away, about 40, about 43 hours away before we really start getting into pre-coverage, right, of the day. So I'm excited. We did another mock for y'all. Like, I'm excited about that. I like how this is shaking out. I like to see my Georgia boys crawling up these draft lists. Like, it's good. It's good. It's good.
Yeah, it'll be something different to talk about than what Kevin wants to talk about, which is wide receivers and their contracts and their holdouts. Just to bring back and call back from last week. It's going to be fun, and the best part about this, guys, and I know we're a fantasy football podcast, right? So it's so much fun to figure out where these guys that we've kind of seen in college and where they're going to go in the draft, and then how valuable that makes them for fantasy. Like, there's so much writing on what happens this weekend in terms of at least our future, right, for the next season or two of guys that we're excited to see and where they take off with their NFL careers. And it's such an exciting time. And there's just, hope springs eternal, right? Like everybody's got a chance. Realistically, nobody's got. There's like 6 teams that have a legit shot at winning the Super Bowl. But there's always that one team that kind of surprises you because of what they do in the draft, a la Cincinnati a couple of years back, and look where that landed them last year. So if you draft well, you can set yourself up for seasons to come, and hopefully our favorite teams decide to make the right moves come Thursday, Friday, Saturday.
Although our favorite team is not going to be making any moves, at least on the board on Thursday, and I doubt that they're going to be trading up into the first round because of that just amazing deal. Like the more I think about that, as more time passes, the happier I get that Russell Wilson is now the quarterback for the Denver Broncos, and we finally solved that issue.
Did you guys see all the social media videos of him trotting out there for, OTAs or whatever they got going on right now? And just to see that orange and blue 3 trot out there. There was one video of him handing the ball off to Nathaniel Hackett, and Hackett with his wheels comes running past the camera. Like, it genuinely looks like these guys, like, at least early on, they're having fun, right? And I'm a firm believer that if you're playing football, it's a kid's game, right? It is a child's game that grown men are paid an exorbitant amount of money to play. But if you lose the childlike fun factor in it, then what's the point of doing it? Because there are so many other things that you can do to hate. And you won't make that kind of money, but it just looks like they're having fun, and that makes it fun for fans to see. And of course, the news that came out today makes things a little bit even more fun.
Yeah. So a couple things, right? They had their first practice. They brought the music back, right? That was a big thing under Vic Fangio. No music. I don't want to be yelling over the music for these players to hear me. It doesn't make any sense. You can already see how Nathaniel Hackett's going to try and relate to these players. And his presser was great. Like, they asked him about bringing the music back. And I'm paraphrasing, so, bear with me. But he's saying, basically, look, y'all, like, these players have to play in challenging conditions with distractions all the time. Why wouldn't we have music in there? Like, if you're going to have noise around you throughout all of game day, and when you're playing and you're trying to get your calls in, why not get used to some of that and get them used to these conditions, so that way come game day, the noise is one less distraction that they're not paying attention to. And it's a different approach than what we've seen in Denver lately. And it's a refreshing approach, because right, wrong, or indifferent, if you can get the players to buy into the head coach and his system, that system flourishes, right, and tends to perform better. We all know, based off of every single soundbite, clip, news article, tweet, video, you name it. They're bought into Russell Wilson. Like, nobody's preparing harder than this guy, and he is so relatable to be around, and just able to gravitate towards him. And that's the allure of these elite quarterbacks, guys. Like, it's not the fact that we think he's going to come in as a Denver fan. So I'm going to take my, host hat off for a second. As a Denver fan, it's not that I think he's going to come in and throw 50 touchdowns and only 5 interceptions and 6,000 yards and break all these records and be the MVP. It's the fact that his attention to detail and his mindset towards the game it's like a magnet. Like, people just gravitate towards it and they buy in because they see this guy doing it and they see his results and they want results like that. They want to work hard for their quarterback. And it's a vicious cycle in the best way. So all these things, yes, hope springs eternal. Hell yes, I'm happy to be a Bronco fan. Melvin Gordon just re-signed with the Broncos. I believe I called that one 5-6 weeks ago when we were talking free agency. He's back. We got the 1-2 punch. Don't freak out. Don't freak out. Because now we have a split backfield. It's okay. It worked last year. It can work again. Nathaniel Hackett had a hand in running the playbook between the Packers, right? And Jamal Williams and Aaron Jones, and then A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. It can work. It absolutely can work. So calm down. It brings a little bit of veteran leadership still to that running back room, because quite frankly, they didn't really have any veteran Mike Boone, right? Technically Mike Boone, running back, fullback, but now they have a veteran presence. These backs get dinged up throughout the season. It's all good news. Just relax and go with the flow. The only part about that I'm a little disappointed about, just a little bit, is that means the Broncos aren't going to draft James Cook in the second round. And I was kind of hoping my boy would come from Athens to Denver, and we'd be seeing James Cook in that backfield too. I don't think that's happening now. They're going a different direction in the second round, but it's okay. It's okay. We will get through that.
And here's just another thought on Russell Wilson. He has endeared himself to the city, right? I mean, he threw out the first pitch at a Rockies game. He's been courtside at Nuggets games. Like, I know that has nothing to do with his on-field performance. But Kevin, to your point of paying attention to detail and how he just understands what this league is, what he is being paid to do handsomely, the haul that Denver gave up to get him to come here, and for him to kind of repay, the fans for that. It's one of the things that, like, Russ just gets it, right? He understands what his role is as the quarterback of the Denver Broncos, because whether you like it or not, and the Avs can be as good as they are, the Nuggets can be as good as they are, the Rapids can exist, and everybody, it is a Denver Broncos town, right? And so for him to understand, when you are the starting quarterback of the Denver Broncos, you have responsibilities outside of what happens at the facility between the lines on game day. And he has endeared himself to the city, and it's gotten the fan base excited. I mean, if you're an owner, of a team, you can't have enough Russell Wilsons on your team to kind of endear themselves to their community. So it's another caveat to it. And I know that we've kind of gone off the rails here to talk about the Denver Broncos, but this is as exciting as it's been to be a Broncos fan since before Peyton retired. Like, that's where we're at with our Bronco fandom. There have been some dark days over the last couple of years. So allow us to gush for a little bit when we get excited about our team and the upcoming season and seasons to come, really.
Absolutely. So lots of really good things going on there. Like we said, we are T-2 days and counting until the draft kicks off, which, by the way, if y'all didn't know, we're going to be live for y'all on the 28th, which is draft day. We're going to kick off our live coverage starting at 7:45 p.m. Eastern time. You can find that right here on the YouTube channel. And actually, we're doing the mega cast on this one. So we're being broadcast on YouTube, on Twitch, on Facebook, on Twitter, And if I can figure out how to get us on our website, we're going to be live streaming there as well. So we've got a 5-cast for you, the likes of which certain 4-letter networks wish they had the type of excitement going on across their airwaves is what we will have going on here, because we have exceptional guests coming on, and we're not going to give you the same old that you see across all these network coverages, which they're good. They're good. Don't get me wrong, but they won't give you some of the spice and some of the flavors that, of course, the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast will give you. So if you haven't done so already, whenever you're listening to this, subscribe to it. If you're listening on the podcast platforms, you don't want to miss this thing live. Go over to YouTube, go over to Twitch, click the subscribe button, and make sure that you're setting those reminders and you're tuning in, because this one is going to be an absolute blast and it's going to be a lot of fun. So
hey, and you don't got to worry about the subscription service, guys. We've been doing this for what, 3-ish years?
Coming up on 3. October marks 3 full years.
Marks 3 full years. So let's call it 30 months that we've been doing this.
Yes.
That is 29 months longer than CNN Plus lasted. So good job, everybody.
Well, that's just because we have better content. I'm sorry, but it is. So
fair.
Anyway, make sure you're tuning in. It's going to be a blast. Now, guys, let's go ahead and kick right on, because I'm sure everybody that's tuned in for this episode is wanting to know how this mock is going to fall. And this is an interesting one, right? Like, I've been keeping a very close eye on a lot of mocks, and ours actually falls a little different than a lot of other folks in the industry falls a little different than a lot of the talking heads at a lot of these big networks, kind of how their boards also fall there as well. So I'm actually very excited for this one. Every time I keep looking through the one that we prepared tonight, the more and more I like it, and the more and more I begin to think that we may be onto something here, and the more that leads me to believe that we may we may get all 32 picks right. I'm just saying, maybe it could happen. Yeah, not gonna bet on it, but could happen.
We'd screenshot it so that way when we do, like, look here, y'all, like, this happened.
Yeah, right.
Exactly. Well, so that's going to lead us into the mock draft 2.0, the last mock draft you're going to get from the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast before you see us go live on draft night. Yes, Alex.
And before we get into this mock draft, there is going to be teams that want to move, right? Like, the more you're looking at this draft and this draft order, like, teams are going to want to move, right? And not up. Like, I don't think teams want to move up. I think teams are wanting to move down, because you look at some of these teams that have, the Giants have 2 in the top 10, the Jets have 2 in the top 10. Like, I know these teams need players, but at the same time, there really may not be players that are worthy of being drafted at that spot, if that makes sense to you guys. There are going to be teams that want to move down. I just don't think there's any teams that want to move up. I just don't think there will be dance partners, which I think is going to make this first round really intriguing. And we're going to see a lot of picks come in at the last minute, because these teams will be exhausting every option to get rid of that pick and to try and find some other way instead of having to select a player.
Yeah, absolutely. You look at the talent, right, that we didn't have making the first round with our first mock and then with this one. And holy smokes, the top half of that second round has a lot of really, really good talent left over. And we have been touting this from the beginning. So it's, you kind of have your 7, maybe 8, like, cornerstone, like, wow players in this draft. And outside of that, it's depth. It is good raw talent. It's a lot of development. It's a lot of pieces to help fill out your roster. There's not a whole lot of, surefire home run hits. All the quarterbacks are included with that. I don't care what anyone says. There is no surefire have to go get quarterback. There's intriguing players for sure. But I think that adds to your sentiment, Alex. Like, these guys, they almost want to trade back because they realize that this draft has depth. It's not top end talent. It's depth, because they can get 3-4 pieces for the price of 1 by trading back, and they feel like they're better off for it because the talent drop is not as steep as we've seen in some years past between round 1 and round 2, or even round 2 and round 3.
Right.
So it will be super interesting. I think the first round is going to stay pat for the most part. Like, I don't know that we're going to see many trades because of that reason. Like, teams are not going to want to give up future picks in a draft that's supposed to be better next year than it is this year as far as top end talent to, jump up and grab the one guy. So it's going to be hard for teams to find dance partners in this one, but it will make it intriguing, and it will be a lot of conversation pieces as we finish out the night on, the moves and shakes of round one.
Yeah, and the teams that I see potentially really trying to move back there hard would be Green Bay, Kansas City, Cincinnati even, and possibly Detroit with that last pick there, right? And that's if some team wants to really come up and try and get a one of these project quarterbacks that we see in this draft.
That magical fifth year, right?
Exactly, right, and that's the reason we'll see those things happen. But I think you guys are both spot on. I don't think we're going to see. Right, I've heard everybody telling me we're going to see a trade inside the top 10. I said, no, there's not the talent level at this point. And the teams that are in the top 10 and where they're positioned with how this thing should fall, I don't think that they're going to move. I do really like the going for twos comment here coming in on YouTube. Every team wants to trade back. It'll be like an industry fantasy draft. Everybody wanting to trade back. I couldn't agree more. And that coming from Jeff over there, I believe, on going for two. We've had Jeff on before. Absolutely awesome guest, knows his stuff. We've done another show as well, like another channel to go check out, guys. So make sure that you're hopping on and doing that as well. But let's go ahead and get on into this one. Kevin, you are the first one on the clock. And so again, to kind of set the stage for everybody so we can see pull back the curtain here, see how we did this. We were rotating through the picks, right? It wasn't anybody had one specific team or anything like that. We just simply rotating it in order, and we're going through that one, and we're drafting that as if we were the GM of that one. Again, we set up 0 trades allowed on this particular one. Just from the standpoint, we're going to pick it as the board lies and kind of give the thoughts as far as how the teams, if they're sitting there, how we would go with that one. So, Kevin, you are the Jacksonville Jaguars and sitting on the board number 1.
So number 1 should be no shocker. I mentioned this last week when we were doing our mock of who my number 1 overall player is. It is Trayvon Walker out of the University of Georgia. I think he is able to fill a couple different needs and almost do something like a Micah Parsons-esque. Now, not exactly the same type of athlete that Micah Parsons is, but Trayvon Walker jumps off the page in his metrics. So it is fairly close. He can play with his hand in the dirt. He can play standing up. Thank you for muting that, Derek. My eardrum now just busted.
Sorry. You're welcome.
Oh my God. Live, right? We're live. Anyway, he obviously stops the run coming from Georgia. We saw his development as a pass rusher. So Trayvon Walker for me is the number 1 pick in this draft. And the Jacksonville Jaguars are able to kind of fill out almost a position and a half. I'm not going to say 2 full positions with that 1 pick, but his versatility will allow him to stay on the field more as long as he can digest the playbook down there in Jacksonville.
Right. I really like that pick now. Like, I was one of those that when you first brought it up and you had him going in like last week's, and you had him going like number 2 right behind Aiden Hutchinson on our last draft. I was like, wow, that seems like he's really kind of going. But the more that I've dug in on this guy, the more I've come around to that way of thinking there as well. He is a freak athlete, huge body, runs really well, stops the run, can get after the pass rush there as well. But the other thing that's really starting to stand out to me is the fact of, Trent Baalke is a guy that goes after exceptional athletic talent. Like, that's really kind of how he's, stamped his GM tenure throughout the years. And, this is one of those that from an athletic profile, right? Like, being as big as he is, being able to move as fast as he is, kind of fits almost that Aldon Smith type of athletic profile there, which Trent Baalke is, like that was his guy going out and getting in San Francisco. So I could absolutely see them going that way and really have kind of come around to how you're thinking there on that one, Kevin. So I like it. Let's go ahead and head on over to number 2, the Detroit Lions. At this point, couldn't wait to run this pick up to the stand because they are going to get their hometown guy, and it's going to be Aiden Hutchinson going with the 2nd overall pick to the Detroit Lions. Aiden Hutchinson, as we know, grew up in Detroit. He is a local guy, went to school right up the road at Ann Arbor, was a Heisman finalist from a defensive player position. Like, this is one of those that he fits kind of that feel for Detroit, fits the scheme of that, and I believe also fits what Dan Campbell and team are trying to build down there or up there in Detroit, and really kind of a no-brainer slam dunk for them.
All right, we move on to pick number 3, the Texans on the clock. I think with those two guys gone, with Walker and Hutchinson gone, I think that really dictates where Houston goes here. And their needs, obviously, there are a lot of them. But I think if they're going to try to figure out the Davis Mills experiment, then they're going to try to protect him. So I have the Texans taking Evan Neal, the O-lineman out of Texas Alabama. Excuse me, I wrote down my notes wrong. But I've got him going Evan Neal here at the O-line position. And I think if they don't go with the guy who goes next in our mock, which I could see them doing because, you know, he's a very good, very, very good player and can solve a lot of problems. But I think the Texans go offense here and take Evan Neal.
So, quick question for you, and I don't know if you saw the news article that released today or not, but there have been reports out that some teams have taken Evan Neal either off their draft board or significantly downgraded him because of how his physical went when he was doing team visits and everything else. Does that worry you about his potential of going top 3?
Yes, and that stuff, I would be curious. I'm not sure where you saw that from, but
it was on Pro Football Talk. Walter Football, I think, is my correct source there. They're the ones who got the information first. The whole article was diving around the fact that that's just what they've gotten from reports. They have not released specifics of the injury to, you know, maintain the sanctity of the player and his potential and trying not to sabotage anything. But it was that they've heard from multiple sources that NFL teams are a little worried after being able to medically work him out. And it was the first I had heard of it too. That was the first I'd really caught wind of it as well. So I was just curious if you had seen that, and knowing that now, if we were starting over, would you maybe adjust slightly?
Probably. And I'm seeing the article now. I would say that is a bit of an issue. I also would say that this might be a little bit of a smoke and mirrors job by some other teams that are hoping that he might fall a little bit to where they might be able to snag him, because that's interesting. The timing of this is very interesting. Their sourcing is very interesting. I'm not sure, again, what their source is on that, but that is interesting in that, look, there's a lot of mental games being played right now between these clubs, and information will only get out if somebody wants it to get out right now. So that's a little interesting that some of these teams are saying, well, he's got these issues with his medicals. So that probably does change some things. Again, I guess for full transparency, we did this draft kind of over a couple days, but really hammered it down on what was that, Saturday night, I think, is when we kind of hammered this draft down. So a report that comes out early Tuesday probably does change some things, but we'll stick with this for this exercise.
Fair enough. All right, so going into pick number 4, the New York Jets are on the clock, and they're going at definite position of need, probably best player available at this point, a guy who can help them try and right the ship for the Jets inside the division with the pass-happy Josh Allen, with Tua and all of his new weapons down in South Beach, along with the Patriots and their ever-revolving door of guys you've never heard of jumping off and making plays week after week. And I am talking about Sauce Gardner, the cornerback out of Cincinnati.
I like it. Alrighty, so that's going to move us on into the Giants here. And the Giants, they've got a lot of need here. They've got some need around the offensive line. They need some help around edge, and they need a tight end there as well. But of course, this draft class, you're not going to reach up into the first round, especially into a top 10 pick for a tight end with this draft class, unlike last year where we saw the Falcons take a Kyle Pitts as a top 5 pick there. So that is not going to be the case this year. So they will wait to try and fill that tight end positional need in the second, more likely in the third round, I think, as far as how that one's probably going to play out there. So that leaves us with the offensive line, specifically an offensive tackle or an edge rusher. Lots of good options here, right? You've got a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau that's kind of fallen down the draft boards a little bit. He was an early consensus guy that could compete for that number 1 spot. You've got great offensive linemen out there, but I think that there's a tier difference right now from Ikem Ekwonu compared to the next defensive end here, compared to the offensive tackles as compared to what you would find in the defensive end drop off there. So that's where the Giants are going to go. They're going to take the big body offensive tackle out of North Carolina State, Ikem Ekwonu.
Yeah, I think the Giants are super happy with that pick.
Yeah, I think they'd be thrilled.
Yeah, I think they're really happy that, arguably the best offensive tackle in this draft falls to them at 5. If he does fall, it's going to make it even more difficult for teams to jump in front of Carolina, who Alex is going to pick for in just a second, because everybody's kind of expecting Carolina to go in a certain direction. But if a guy like Ekwonu falls to number 5, the price tag for that pick shoots way up, because he is not only a position of need, but quite frankly, very arguably, let me articulate myself better, arguably the best offensive tackle in this draft. So it'll be a hefty price tag for a team to get in front of Carolina based off of this scenario.
Well, and what you just brought up there earlier, Kevin, with Evan Neal and some of those medicals, if that really isn't, if that isn't a smokescreen, like we tend to see this time of year, right? Like if those reports are very accurate and that truly is the case, that teams are concerned about that would move Ikem Ekwonu into a tier amongst himself as far as that tackle position goes.
Absolutely.
I would agree with that. All right, let's move on to pick number 6, the Carolina Panthers. And guys, I don't think they want to make this pick here, but I think they have no choice but to make this pick here. So I think that the Panthers go ahead and pull the trigger and take Malik Willis out of Liberty, the first quarterback off the board. I think if they had their way, they'd prefer to trade down and not have to pick him at 7, here at 6. But I don't think there's any way they can get away from it. And they definitely need to shore up some answers. And look, here's the deal. They've already got Sam Darnold for at least this next year. You can let Willis kind of develop, and then worst case scenario, if for whatever reason, they need to bring him in, you get him some real game time reps, like we've seen some teams do with their quarterback situation. So I don't think they like that they have to make this pick here, but I think they have to make this pick here and take Malik Willis.
Yeah, I think the only thing that could truly shake this for the Panthers is if they really love Evan Neal and he falls again because of the smoke screen, or if the Giants decide to go in a different direction and maybe they go Thibodeau, right, and go for that edge rusher and kind of put the thought in Carolina's head, right, well, we can go offensive tackle here and go top of second round and grab our quarterback there. I think that's the one scenario that could possibly shake it up for Carolina a little bit. But as this one sits, Alex, you're right. I don't know that they necessarily want to, love to, but this is what they're pinned into at the moment. So Malik Willis, who definitely has he probably has the most exciting ceiling out of any quarterback in this class, because of the huge arm and his ability to move outside the pocket. But he does have a lot of work to do as far as footwork and route concepts and reading defenses, stuff that he did not have to do at Liberty very much. he, again, developmental project, guys. Don't expect him to step in and be the day one starter.
Nope.
All right, so Carolina picks Willis. So now we're on back to the New York Giants, who are picking at 7. So a guy like Kayvon Thibodeau, who we rumored they could look at number 5, they get the good graces, and he falls back to him at 7. So they get a top 3 pass rusher and arguably the best, definitely a top 2 offensive tackle in this draft. If you're the New York Giants and it shakes out like this, you couldn't be happier. You really couldn't be happier based off of how this set out. You got cornerstones for each side of the ball, one to protect your quarterback, one to go get the quarterback, and you have to be thinking, all right, with these 2 picks, this should be enough to at least, help us turn this corner, right? As we figure out what Daniel Jones is or isn't this last year. Maybe Kadarius Toney takes another step. There's rumors that they want to trade Darius Slay going on, but for what the Giants have, they couldn't be happier getting these 2 guys in the top 7 picks of the draft. They would be standing on the moon at this point.
Isn't it Bradbury that they're trying to move off of?
They might be. There's been 3 or 4 different guys that they're trying to move off of. So they might. They're. I have not seen the Bradbury thing that they're looking to move their defensive back there. The 2 reports I saw, one was Sunday or Monday morning, I believe, about Kadarius Toney, and then the other one about Darius Slay I saw this morning. So again, it's just different things that are popping up this time of year. Typically, you're not hearing a whole lot of noise about people wanting to move players as smoke screens. So that tells me that Slay and the front office has finally kind of had a falling out from his season 2.5 years ago, where he kind of busted out towards the tail end of the season and made a lot of fantasy owners happy because he kept hitting those big plays for us at the end of, I believe it was 2019.
Gotcha. Alrighty, I like it. So that puts the Atlanta Falcons on the clock. And the Atlanta Falcons are a team that's, quite frankly, they're almost as depleted across a lot of roster positions as the Texans, where you look at their draft board and the positional need is just about everything on this one. So they're going to go with a guy that can be a building piece for them, a guy that a lot of folks have rated as their number 1 overall wide receiver in this draft class. And I am talking about Garrett Wilson. You've got to give Mariota another target besides just Kyle Pitts in this offense here. Garrett Wilson is a guy that does that. He's not necessarily the same physical specimen that Calvin Ridley is, but he brings some of that Calvin Ridley-esque type of game to the Atlanta Falcons there, and allow some things to take place. Now, one of the things that Garrett Wilson's going to be able to do is he doesn't necessarily need to get down the field to take those deep shots, and that's not how Mariota plays anyway. So allow him to kind of get in, get out, quick yak type of deal, and that's where I think he's going to fit very well into this offense. And they're going to punt their quarterback issue down the road because they're going to be probably having another top 10, potentially even another top 5 draft pick next year, where the quarterback draft class gets more rich. And with edge rusher, I think that they can wait on that one here as well.
All right, that moves us to Seattle at 9. And with the 2 top tackles gone, with Sauce Gardner off the board, and already 1 quarterback taken, I think Seattle gets a little anxious here. And I think they also go quarterback, and I think they go Kenny Pickett out of Pitt. And again, I don't think this is a pick that they necessarily want to make, but I think it's a pick that they have to make. Look, we've seen what Drew Lock is. We've seen it up close and personal. So I think that Seattle, while they say like, oh, we're going to let Drew, we're going to see what we got out of Drew Lock, we're going to see all that, I still think that they go quarterback here, just because of the position of need and what's left on the board. It just screams to me like, why not?
Right.
Yeah, Drew Lock needs competition, right? You need to see how he stacks up against other guys. Yes, they're kind of flirting around with Geno, serviceable in his own right to an extent, but I would agree they're kind of forced into quarterback here at this point because they got to get some competition in that room so DK Metcalf doesn't go nuclear on him.
Right.
So back to the Jets. I didn't realize this spot, I didn't realize it when Alex was picking from this spot. You get to double up on all these teams who have the 2 first-round picks. It's kind of fun.
Yeah.
Challenging.
No, absolutely. So the New York Jets stay on the defensive side of the ball. They feel like they have some key pieces there at wide receiver that were injured last year. They're going to get those back. This wide receiver class is pretty deep, so the Jets have other options there as well. So right now they're going to go edge rusher. So they have their guy in the secondary. Now they have their guy to try to force errant passes so their guy in the secondary can catch the ball. And they're going to go with Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State by way of the University of Georgia, guy who really flashed once he got down to Florida State last year, and really, in a lot of reports, gave credit back to the base foundation of Georgia, but was kind of let free, right? He different kind of concept, and he was allowed to attack more at Florida State, and really shined down there. So Jermaine Johnson coming off the edge for the Jets at pick number 10.
Yeah, I really like that one there, right? And you look at how Robert Saleh really tries to set up his teams and set up his teams in the past. It is all about trying to put pressure on the quarterback with his front four and allowing his defensive backfield to go out there and do their thing without necessarily, taking a lot of time to do that. So I love that pick there, and I think that that's a very real option for him. And there's a lot of folks out there that would actually argue that Jermaine Johnson is, potentially even a little further up the board when it comes to these defensive edge rushers.
Yeah, so to recap our top 10, we go Walker, Hutchinson, Neal, Gardner, Ikwonu, Willis, Thibodeau, Wilson, Pickett, Johnson. That's right. 6 on the offensive side, 4 on the defensive side, if I've done my math correctly.
Yeah, I think you need
go to
to
a
flip
public
that.
school.
You've got 4 defensive edges.
Excuse
taken.
me. Yes. Yeah. So I don't know. What do you feel about that? Our top 10 there.
I feel like it's in balance. Like I again, we wouldn't pick these guys if we didn't think it wasn't possible and kind of where we thought, but I think it's in balance with what we're going to see. It's going to be a couple, maybe a or 2 defensive players more than offensive players, but all these guys fill immediate gaps in position of needs. Hey, thanks, Alex. I'd love to sit at the table with you.
Oh, shoot. I have my mic on still. Son of a gun. If you'd like to sit at the table, Kevin, go ahead.
Hey, I'll sit at your table anytime, buddy. But no, I think it works out very well. And honestly, it's the first time I'd looked at that breakdown that you just said, but it does make sense. I like it.
Yeah. And again, one of those that, there could be a couple other picks there, right? Like there's a lot of folks tying Drake London and trying to tie him to the Jets there with that 10th pick. But again, I think if you've got Jermaine Johnson on the table, like that's the only one that I'm looking at this thing going, that's where I really could see some movement there. But the way Robert Saleh likes to have that, likes to set up a defense, right? You've got a defensive-minded head coach, a defense that hasn't been good in a long time, and with a Jermaine Johnson edge rusher that can be very good for the next few years, allows them to salt out some of their contract situations that they have across that defensive line that really can be a hamstring, that can hamstring them in future years. So I like that one a lot. And the fact that the way this wide receiver class is they can easily get something later on in this draft to help round out that room a little bit. I'm not saying that the talent of a Drake London will be available later, but I am saying that you'll be able to get another good piece to help fill that room and round that one out there a little bit. All righty. So moving off of the top 10, that moves us into the 11th pick, and that's the Washington Commanders here. And again, right, I just got done talking about Drake London and how he could potentially be going number 10, yada, yada, yada. Another team that he's been very closely linked to is this pick right here at number 11. The Commanders really trying to bring in another piece for Carson Wentz, bringing in a Drake London would allow them to rotate McLaurin, London around those different positions, as well as Curtis Samuel coming back and really kind of give a really good 300 monster when it comes to that receiving game. But I don't think they go that route. I think a guy that, quite frankly, a lot of folks had as their number one overall prospect early on in this draft process is still on the board, and that is a defensive weapon type of player, right? You also look at the fact that Ron Rivera is a defensive-minded head coach there, and the fact that you can get him a defensive weapon, the safety out of Notre Dame. That's where I think they're going to go with this one, Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah, super smart player, right? Very wise, understands the game, very instinctive in a lot of different scenarios. I am worried that teams fade him more than necessary because of how he ran at his pro day. His numbers were not very explosive. So it will be interesting to see how or the reports after the draft of how his boardroom sessions went, right? How is he able to talk X's and O's and show his ability to process the game in his head to make up for maybe that half a step or step that he is a little bit behind some of the real explosive athletes in this draft class.
Yeah, it's interesting because his tape shows that he's probably faster than that 4.6 or 4.7 speed that he was clocked at on that 40 on field speed there a little bit, but obviously it didn't translate into some of those workout and some of those measurables there.
Got ourselves a gamer.
All right, we move on to pick number 12. The Vikings on the clock here. They need a D lineman. They could take a corner because they're the Vikings, even with a new GM and new head coach. We are just full of fun audio today. By the way, that was a -1 from earlier where I thought my mic was muted, but it wasn't. So that's a -1.
It's the first time we've ever had a -1, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. Anyways, Vikings on the clock at 12. They need a D lineman. They need a corner. They need a tight end as well, but they're not going to go tight end, as we've said. There's no sense of taking a tight end here in the first round. So I have the Vikings going Jordan Davis, the D tackle, out of the University of Georgia. Kevin, you know a thing or two about this big fella.
The Vikings would love this big fella. Let's see. Not too long ago, but long enough in football years. What was it? Linval Joseph and who was the other defensive tackle that the Vikings had, that pair up front? Anyway, regardless, Jordan Davis kind of starts that pairing, right? He is a run-stuffing machine who has the athletic ability to get after the quarterback. That's probably something that the Vikings are going to need to tap into a little bit more than what he did at Georgia. A lot of what he did at Georgia was run-stopping and setting up players from the defensive side of the ball so that way they can peel off of him and get into those gaps that he opens up. So the concepts will translate well to what the Vikings want to use. It just needs to show a little bit more explosiveness in getting after the passer. But high motor guy, a guy that is very intelligent as well and really knows how to kind of cultivate a culture, if you will, as he showed with the University of Georgia this past season. So the Vikings fans should be very happy with big Jordan Davis anchoring the middle of their defensive line for the next decade or so.
Yeah, this was the first one that kind of caught my eye a little bit. Alex, when you were going through that, how much stock did you kind of put in some of that LSU connection that the Vikings have seemingly kind of made over the last few years with some of the current players that they have on the roster, some of that, and and kind of going away from a guy like a Derek Stingley Jr. there?
Well, the thing is, you have to realize that this is a new regime in Minnesota now. It's not Rick Spielman. It's not Mike Zimmer. It's new. It's a new GM. It's a new head coach. So kind of what we've grown to expect out of the Vikings over the last half decade plus, you can kind of throw out the window now because they've got a younger GM that's in there that is really a wild card with what he's going to do, right? We haven't seen him really do a draft on his own as a GM. So I just think they go with position of need. And I think that you want winners. I think they want to establish a winning culture there. Plus, you play in a pretty difficult division where stopping the run is going to be be paramount to winning your division. You're going to need to be able to figure out, how to stop the run when you play Green Bay, because Aaron Rodgers will do enough, right, on his own, but now he doesn't have Devontae Adams. So I think they're going to lean a little bit more on the run game than they have in years previous, despite, what Aaron Rodgers wants to do. Like, the Bears have a decent, run attack with whatever they're throwing out there.
Don't sleep on Monty, man. Don't sleep on Monty.
Right. Well, and that too. And with why am I drawing a blank? This is happening more often than I care to admit.
It's because you're getting old. Welcome to the club.
I am getting old. Which is why I won't be there on Thursday. But the quarterback for Chicago,
Justin Fields.
Justin Fields, thank you very much. With him, being a mobile guy, I just think that they need to address the needs of how to win their division first, and being good on the D line will help them in that division with the potent offenses that we're seeing. And let's not discount the fact that Detroit's really their lone offense is their run game anyways. So stopping the run helps you win the division. You win the division, you get in the playoffs. That's the thought process that I have with Minnesota.
Yeah. All right.
And the easiest way to disrupt the quarterback is pressure right up the middle. Move them off the spot. Mobile quarterbacks or not. So I like the pick. Next up at 13, Houston Texans. Again, tons of holes to fill there in Houston. You could throw a dart, hit a player, and they could probably start for the Texans right now. But the Texans actually get a choice. They're not blindly, throwing darts on this one. And they're going to go cornerback here. So Devin Stingley Jr., the cornerback out of LSU. So they're able to kind of, again, you get your offensive piece, kind of anchoring that offensive line in a new tackle, and then you're able to get a defensive back to help keep up with the likes of Michael Pittman, A.J. Brown, Robert Woods as he comes back from his injury with Tennessee. You have to compete with the mighty Christian Kirk and his contract, down there in Jacksonville. So, again, you could throw a dart and the Texans would need it. So right now, BPA, and that would be Devin Stingley Jr.
All righty, I like it. And that's going to definitely kind of change, potentially where the next player we're going to go, right? Like we discussed last week when we were talking about this, that if Jordan Davis is here, like the Baltimore Ravens could absolutely take him there, right? He kind of fits a lot of what the Ravens have done in the past with those giant defensive nose tackles in the past there, right? With like Saragusa comes to mind, kind of fits that mold there, right? As well as the fact that they're still looking corner with Baltimore, edge, cornerback, offensive line being a positional need here for them. And so, the fact that Stingley Jr. just went, I think they're going to also go cornerback here, but they're going to have to go with a little different route here. They're going to go with the guy out of Washington, Trent McDuffie.
Isn't it crazy and how fast the NFL turns over, right? But wasn't it just 2 years ago, Baltimore was touting that they had the best, like, four-headed defensive back unit of all time. And now this is a position of need. Contracts, players moving on, everything else. But it's crazy how fast the NFL turns over, because it wasn't long ago where Baltimore was absolutely loaded in the secondary. And now they're having to turn around and reload again because veterans cost lots of moolah.
Yeah, and honestly, Derek, your pick here for the Ravens kind of threw a wrench in the plans that I had for my pick here for the Eagles. So I was about ready to just type in Trent McDuffie's name here as we were going along, and then that threw me for a loop. So I might have reacted a little. I might have overreacted, which I think Philly might do anyways if this plays out the way that we think.
I like this pick a lot.
I do too, and here's why. I have the Eagles here at 15, making their first pick of the first round. I have them going Jamison Williams, the receiver out of Alabama, and the reason why I have them going with Jamison Williams instead of a Drake London is because of the connection that they've had with Alabama players. I think they know how to that they also want to bring in somebody who understands how to win, understands what it takes to be a part of, a big time program. There's some familiarity with Alabama boys that they've brought in over the last several years. So I go Jamison Williams here because they need receiver help. They need to give Hurts a few more options. And I just think that they're trying to go for speed on the outside. And that's what, some Jamison Williams will help them. I think that's where Howie Roseman goes here.
Right. And when you look at where Jalen Hurts has been extremely successful for, it's in programs that's a run first type of team, right? We saw that also take place with Philadelphia last year when they started running the ball more. All of a sudden they started winning games. But also the type of receiver that you're able to put around Jalen Hurts, if you can put some of those very speedy backs out there and guys that can really be yak monsters on that one. You've got that a little bit with Devontae Smith already. You bring a Jamison Williams in here, complete that a little bit. Love that pick there. Love that potential pairing.
No, I completely agree. Put the pressure on that NFC East where Washington's secondary, meh. Dallas's secondary isn't as good as what it looked last year on paper. They kind of outkicked their coverage. The Giants have an okay secondary with Bradbury back there, but if they're truly looking to move him, like you were saying, Derek, then
there's a rumor I've been hearing.
Yeah, then they're just kind of stuck with Jabril Peppers back there, right? And he's not a shutdown corner by any stretch.
Well, we'll see what happens with Jabril Peppers coming off that injury too, and see how he bounces back.
Right. So I like the move for Philly a lot. Explosive. It's an explosive offense, even more so at this pick. So Eagles took Jamison Williams at 15. So the New Orleans Saints had to kind of readjust slightly, just move one spot down their draft board. And they're going to pick up Drake London, wide receiver out of USC, get a true running mate for Michael Thomas, get a extra weapon for Jameis Winston, and try and make this offense a little bit more explosive than what it has been in the past when you're just relying on Alvin Kamara with an injured Michael Thomas. I think there's a possibility the Saints end up going offensive line here, to be quite honest, but I like the idea of them getting their guy early and finding that running mate and another weapon on the outside who can also come in and play in the slot as Drake London did at USC.
Right. And Kevin, I think you're right. I think this could be one of those that New Orleans is going to have to take a good hard look at that 16th pick and go, are we taking our wide receiver here or are we addressing some of our offensive line here? Yeah, there's a lot of talk about them potentially going out and getting a quarterback. I think they're fairly set as far as that goes right now on that one. They're getting a developmental player if they're going quarterback there. But so it all depends on who's still available at that offensive line position and who's available at the wide receiver. The fact that wide receivers starting to get a little bit going there, and who knows who falls back to them, because the Chargers are a team that have some wide receiver need, have some offensive line need, have some defensive line need here as well. But the Chargers, having just signed Mike Williams to a fairly good contract, they bring in tight end help there. They've also got Keenan Allen under contract for a while yet to go. And the backfield's pretty well set on the offensive side of the ball. I think they're going to bring in some additional help, allow a guy like Justin Herbert to even get a little bit more time, bolster up those guys protecting his front there a little bit. And I think that they're going to go offensive line and go with Charles Cross, the big body guy out of Mississippi State there. While Charles Cross plays a little bit more on the interior line there, I think that still helps them out. They just lost Brian Beluga off of that offensive line there, and this helps a little bit with the stopgap for them here.
Yeah, protect Herbert at all costs should be the mantra for the Chargers moving forward.
Yes.
All right, we move on to pick number 18, the Eagles, again, back on the clock. And this is something that I don't know who had the Eagles when we did mock version 1.0. But you get a you pointed like I know who you were pointing at.
Well, if it wasn't you and I'm pointing, who do you think I was pointing at?
That's why I just raised my hand and go, it's this guy, me right here.
Again, I went to a public school, so like process of elimination and stuff. All right, the Eagles again back on the clock, And this is a guy that I think probably should go earlier than this. But with the way it worked out, he kind of just kept falling down our draft board. So I've gone with George Karlaftis, the D end out of Purdue. Again, just to get some pressure on the quarterback. I know they don't necessarily need defensive ends, but I don't think you can ever have enough people to pressure the quarterback in a quarterback-driven league. So that's where I think the Eagles go here. Offense first, and then bolster up defense on the line with their second pick.
Yeah, absolutely right. You can never have enough pass rushers. At 19, the Saints are back on the clock. Fate rewards them, if you will. They passed on the offensive lineman to go get their wide receiver the first go-round. The second turn, they are not going to pass up on their offensive lineman. They are looking at Trevor Penning out of Northern Iowa. Sorry, UNI. So I think this helps the Saints again, right? He is a guy who can look on the right side. I don't believe he's a true left tackle, but he showed very well at the combine. He really started to generate some buzz. So we'll see how he goes into an NFL locker room and kind of develops his body a little bit, put a little bit more muscle on him and all that good stuff. But a guy that can help keep Jameis upright as he's not squinting anymore from his eye surgery 2 years ago, and help him find Drake London and Michael Thomas.
Yeah, I like that move a lot there. That's going to move us down to the Pittsburgh Steelers here. The Pittsburgh Steelers need some help at defensive back. They've got wide receiver listed as a positional need there, but that's a depth piece for them, right? They're not necessarily looking to bring somebody in and start immediately over a Chase Claypool or a Deontay Johnson here. So I think that they can address that one in the second or third round there. Quarterback, also a big need there with Ben Roethlisberger retiring. This is one of those that I've seen some things starting to come out that if, Jordan Davis could potentially fall this far, and now not in our minds would he fall that far, but some of the other mocks I've seen going, and like that's a guy that I see a lot of folks trying to tie to Pittsburgh now all of a sudden, and kind of fits from what they've done in the past historically. But since he's no longer there, the defensive backs are going to be some projects on this one. They could even look at going with a linebacker here, some incredible speed guys to try and pair up with like a Devin Bush. But I think that they are going to address their most glaring need and a guy that's going to be a bit of a project anyway. They've got Mitchell Trubisky under contract for now, and I think that they're just going to see him as a bridge quarterback to see what they can try and develop here. And Matt Corral is going to be the pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, the quarterback out of Ole Miss.
Yeah, quarterback's a very popular landings or Pittsburgh or again, speaking is hard tonight. Quarterback is a popular position for the Steelers to draft here in the first round. So I like Matt Corral. I've seen a couple different names just depending on how people have their draft boards set up with quarterbacks, whether it's Matt Corral, maybe it is someone like a Kenny Pickett. It could even be something like a Desmond Ridder. I don't think it's Sam Howell creeping up the draft board that high, but positionally, it's kind of the universal agreement almost that Pittsburgh's going QB here in the first round.
Right. I actually had a spirited conversation with somebody about the fact that Pittsburgh's going to then try and, they'll take a different position here, and then they'll try and trade back up into the back of the first to try and get Sam Howell. And I looked at him and I said, why in the world would they go out and get Mitch Trubisky 2.0 when Mitch Trubisky actually has, less to work on at this point in his career? So that one just didn't make any sense to me. But yes, I've seen what you've been talking about, Kevin, with the Sam Howell type of moves and potentially Pittsburgh trying to go and get him.
Okay, we move on to the Patriots at number 21. And I don't know about you guys, but I listen to some really smart people when they talk about the draft. And there was somebody I was listening to that made this case so overwhelmingly that I just couldn't disagree with it. So that somebody is Kevin from the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast. And he said that Nakobe Dean was going to go to the Patriots out of Georgia, and I couldn't talk myself out of Nakobe Dean going to the Patriots. So that's what I did here was Nakobe Dean going to the Patriots here.
It just feels like a fit.
It does. It just feels like it completely wrecks the draft. Like everybody else is looking at that going, crap, they got another like stud guy. So I love Nakobe Dean. I've talked about him ad nauseum during our show and even off our show to anybody who will listen to me talk about Nakobe Dean. So he is a guy who will absolutely buy into the Belichick way. He is a guy that can play inside, in coverage. He can get up. He can pressure the quarterback. I think his biggest
great run stopper as well.
Yeah, great run stuffer. I think the one thing that Belichick will work on him with is making sure he does a little bit better job wrapping up in open field tackles. At times, he let guys kind of slip through his arms just a little bit, but that's training, right? Something that you can correct once you get in with coaches, and this becomes your full-time job, and you're not worried about graduating from college in the process. So I love the pick. I think it's great. The Green Bay Packers are now on the clock at 22. And I am buying into the concept that they are going to find some help for Aaron Rodgers. And with this, they're going Chris Olave, wide receiver out of Ohio State. He brings kind of a different mix to the Packers, right? They've got Amari Rodgers last year, which Chris Olave's just a better version of Amari Rodgers, honestly. Can play outside a little bit, but has done most of his damage in the slot. But he's a sure-handed, good route-running receiver who Aaron Rodgers should find a pretty easy connection with here to start it out with. So they address wide receiver to make Aaron Rodgers happy, and all is right in Green Bay for now.
Yep, I like it there as well. Chris Olave, very smooth route runner, so could definitely kind of fit in and create some separation that way. So moving on over to the Arizona Cardinals. The Cardinals have some need as far as an edge rusher goes, wide receiver, cornerback. There's still a very interesting cornerback prospect out there. A guy named Andrew Booth Jr. on the board. You've also got like Kyram Elam, cornerback out of Florida. That's a potential guy that could sneak up here and could be an interesting fit for them. But the fact that you look at that wide receiver room for the Arizona Cardinals, and Cliff Kingsbury, I don't think can help himself as far as getting offensive weapons and offensive players here. But when you look at that wide receiver room currently, you've got DeAndre Hopkins, who is aging at this point. He's 29 coming into this season. So realistically, most of the time it's about that year 31 that you start to see a drop-off come from the wide receivers to it. So a couple of years out there. He's been playing hurt the last year or so. We'll see how he bounces back. They signed A.J. Green, who's 34 years old now and is nowhere near the player that he once was. They've also got a guy that they drafted last year in Rondale Moore, who, a speedster type of guy that they can work some plays in there and doesn't necessarily bolster up that room. So I think they're going to really try and go out there and make the next wide receiver for them to really put their stamp on a splash around. And it's a guy that can play that true archetype, big body guy, Treylon Burks, the wide receiver out of the Arkansas.
I think Arizona is going to have some more questions. There are some real conversations that are going to happen about Kyler Murray. I don't think that they cut ties with Kyler Murray, but there is something up there. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And there is plenty of smoke there with Kyler Murray right now. So get him a wide receiver. Maybe that happens. Maybe that helps. All Kyler wants is more money. This isn't about – I don't think this is even about, the help that he's got around him or anything. He's literally just concerned about a long-term deal to get paid for what he feels his value is. So that's a huge question mark for Arizona.
No, he's got to win a playoff game.
You're right. I agree with you. I absolutely agree with you. Yeah. All right, we move on to pick 24 here with the Dallas Cowboys. They could go a number of different ways here. I wouldn't be surprised if they did go wide receiver just because Jerry, right? Why wouldn't they?
If Burks is still available,
yes.
I think the Cowboys do. I think Jerry goes to his alma mater, and take Burks. So I think the Cardinals in this concept, by taking Burks, Jerry's cussing the Cardinals at this point because he's a guy that Jerry would absolutely take in the first round.
So since Burks is not available, I think that the Cowboys, again, Kevin, remember how you were saying, like, hey, Baltimore was touting that they had, the best defensive backfield of all time. It wasn't that long ago that the Cowboys had the best offensive line of all time, right? Or one of the best offensive lines of all time. And now offensive line is an area of need for this Cowboys team. So I think they go Kenyon Green, the O-lineman out of the same state, Texas A&M. A little bit more of a project, but I think that any help that they can get on that O-line, they need, because they got to protect Dak and they got to create holes for Zeke. So go O-line here. Now, while I think this is the right pick that they should make here is O-lineman, it's Jerry Jones. So, like, I have no idea. I mean, I seriously have no idea.
I think Kevin hit the nail on the head earlier that if Treylon Burks is still there, they're going Treylon Burks with this pick. But if he's off the board, I think you're right. They do go offensive line here.
Yeah, and Green works, right? Because he's gonna fill in. He's gonna jump in and play guard, right? He's not a tackle. He's gonna play guard. So you find a way to make it work. You're shuffling the offensive line and bringing him in to protect Dak and try and pave the way for Zeke a little bit and help him get back to at least some resemblance of what he was, 2 years ago. Not 3 or 4 years ago, but even 2 years ago, where he was averaging, 76 yards a game and not the 54 he averaged last year. All right. Buffalo. Buffalo's on the clock at 25. They could go wide receiver, right? Manny Sanders isn't coming back. Is Gabe Davis the real deal? Or was that a 4-touchdown performance, a flash in the pan? I think the Bills realize that they have to be able to stop people, and seeing what the Bengals have for offensive weapons, what the Chiefs' offensive concepts are, not necessarily, losing Tyreek is a big loss for the Chiefs, but just what their concepts are. You're still messing around with Tyreek Hill. Now he's in your division, pairing up with Jalen Waddle down in Miami. So the Bills are going to worry about stopping the pass right now, more so than getting Josh Allen another wide receiver. And they're going to go with Andrew Booth Jr., the defensive back out of Clemson.
I like that pick there, right? It feels an immediate need for them. Andrew Booth Jr. is a guy that has a very high ceiling, very aggressive type of cornerback there. And there's a lot of talk right now that Jordan Poyer has been in a little bit of a contract negotiation with the Bills there, looking for some more money, the All-Pro, coming off of an All-Pro season. So we'll see how that one plays out. And so that one could become even more of a positional need here sooner than later if they aren't able to resolve that contract dispute, getting another defensive back there. So I really like that move, and I think that that definitely feels in a great spot for them. Let's go ahead and move on over to Tennessee. Now, Tennessee's got some interesting spots that they can go there, right? Like they can go offensive line, they can go wide receiver, even though they brought in Robert Woods during the offseason to help that out. They're still looking for Robert Woods getting a little bit older there. He's got, a few years left and kind of that before we probably start seeing that decline there a little bit. So they're looking, they could be looking for somebody to go that route. Also, running back could be a positional need there. We've seen them make that move in the past where they brought in a guy like Derrick Henry, drafted him in the first round to sit behind DeMarco Murray and kind of get up to speed there and kind of play that one out there a little bit. And I could see them potentially doing that with like a Breece Hall, something like that here. But I think that the move they make, I do think that they're going to go wide receiver here, kind of fill up that room. And they're going to go with Alex's guy here out of North Dakota State, Christian Watson.
It's a big body. So fast. He's fast. He can run routes. He can get behind defenses. They used him in, some jet sweep action. Just a guy that when he gets the ball in his hands, he's going to make a play. So really versatile. Probably has a little bit to work on when it comes to crispness of his route running. Derek, I will tell you, I did see a report from a Fargo reporter that said that Watson's people are hearing maybe day 2. So this may be a little too early. While I think he is a first-round talent, he might be more of a day 2. And I just saw that actually after we had done this exercise. Otherwise, I would have let you know that that inside information.
I actually saw some similar reports coming out as well. And after I saw those, it actually brought me thinking that a guy that I could see them going instead of Christian Watson here is actually going to be on that offensive line, Zion Johnson out of Boston College, who actually has some ties to the organization already, right? Vrabel's son played on that offensive line right next to Zion Johnson there as well. So they know the scouting report, they know the tape. I'm sure that he's got inside information on the young lad that very few other teams out there have, because of the fact that that Vrabel's son and Zion Johnson played there, and I could very much see that being a very immediate fit for them.
I will say, though, that Tennessee has drafted North Dakota State players before. They took Dylan Radins last year, so could be. Tennessee has scouted North Dakota State very well. All right, we move on to 27 here. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers need help on the D line. Got to figure out what the Gronk situation is. So they need tight end help. They also need offensive line help to protect Tom Brady as he gets ready to celebrate his AARP membership. So I have them going out of Central Michigan. I have them going Bernard Ryman, the guard there for the Chippewas, just to provide a little bit more help for Tom.
Always a good idea to protect Tom Brady. He rewards you when you give him time, right?
Right.
It certainly does.
All right. Green Bay is back on the clock. So with their first pick at 22, they address some wide receiver needs, help Aaron Rodgers out. He arm wrestled everybody in the front office, and he manages to win again. And this is kind of my splash pick, and if you will, of the draft, and probably why I waited towards the end. But they go in wide receiver again. And this time they're going to get their big-bodied ex-receiver, the guy who can play outside, guy who has a very good catch radius, can high point the ball. He just needs chemistry with Aaron Rodgers before he blows up to be the next big deal there in Green Bay. And they're going to go with George Pickens, wide receiver out of the University of Georgia. So he's trading a black and red G for a green and yellow G. And this is a guy who he has first round talent. Like he meets or exceeds all the metrics that AJ Green had when he was coming out of Georgia. He was injured most of last year, so he wasn't able to put a whole lot of tape on film. But when they needed him most in that national championship game, he came through. Big 53, 56-yard catch there in the national title game against Alabama. Ran pretty well there at the combine and has very good hands. So Aaron Rodgers not only gets one wide receiver, he now has two to make up for Davante Adams and Marquez Valdez-Scantling, both leaving town. They fill it right back in with some young guys, and Aaron Rodgers is looking at the Green Bay front office saying, finally.
Yeah, that one there, you making that pick definitely forced my hand a little bit on this next pick, because I had George Pickens already ready to type in on that selection for this one right here, and goes a pick too early for the Chiefs to bring him in, which Pickens on the Chiefs, I think, is an even more interesting combination than him to the Packers. But I like the pick there. And so the Chiefs changing directions there a little bit. They are going to go.
I don't want to root against him in Kansas City. He had to go to Green Bay. Okay. Fair
enough. I'll give you that one. So Kansas City going to change direction here a little bit. Instead of getting their guy to kind of take in and fill in that X receiver role for them, they're going to go for another positional need with this pick and take a very good edge rusher out of Minnesota. That is Boye Mafe. So Boye Mafe is the pick here. Another guy that was in a lot of contention for this pick was a guy out of Georgia as well, Devontae Wyatt. Ended up going with the Boye Mafe, though. Just seemed like a little bit more of a scheme fit for what Kansas City be looking for here on this one.
All right, the Chiefs back on the clock here at 30. By the way, how annoying is it going to be that the Chiefs will make this selection and then wait the full time to make the next selection? Like, that's going to be so annoying, especially because it's already going to be like 10:30. We're all going to be tired because we know we got to wake up tomorrow for go to work the next day. Like, it's going to be so
Says
annoying.
the guy who's going to be drunk on his birthday and not telecasting with us.
Right.
That is fair. But the Chiefs will use the entire allotment of time here to go and take a guy that I think a lot of people think is a second-round pick, but I think the Chiefs reach a little bit here. I wouldn't say replace Tyreek, but you get John Mechie out of Alabama. Injury concerns don't seem to be an issue anymore. I think that he will be healthy. Last thing I saw was healthy by June, so start of the season should be no problem. The guy's played a lot of football anyways, so and high level football. So I say they go John Mechie to kind of help fill out that wide receiver room and give Pat Mahomes another weapon. Unfortunately,
Kansas City, they need help at corner, just defensive help, right? Like their defense probably outkicked their coverage a little bit last year. They need some defensive help here, but they're looking at the board going, you know what? Another way to help the defense is to make sure the offense stays on the field. And to do that, we need to protect our quarterback. And the only position we didn't address for the offensive line this offseason was center. So we're going to bring in Tyler Lindenbaum, the center out of Iowa, to kind of reface the entire offensive line in Cincinnati and help out Joe Burrow best they can. And I think he steps in, and for pick 31, there's a good chance he steps in as a day one starter for Cincinnati.
Yeah, I would agree with that one there as well. Alrighty, that moves us into Detroit. Detroit making their second pick in the first round here, so they're going to almost bookend their picks here. They still need some quarterback. They addressed the edge with Aiden Hutchinson with that second overall pick. They still need some help at cornerback, and that could be an interesting one that they could go with there, right, with the cornerback type of deal. You've got a guy like Kareem Elam, cornerback out of Florida, still out there on the board. A lot of people are very high on him. And I've seen a lot of people try and put him in the same tier as an Andrew Booth Jr. there. I don't know that I necessarily subscribe to that full-heartedly here, but the fact that the Lions are making another pick here at 34, I think they're going to address corner there. And the fact that you've got a monster of a linebacker potential here at 32, they're going to go with Devin Lloyd, who a lot of people actually have as a early to mid, like right in the middle of that first round pick. So the fact that he falls all the way down here, the Lions can't wait to shore up that defense even a little bit more so here with this pick. So, guys, that's going to round out the first round. Anything surprise you?
I think between George Pickens and John Mechie the third, all right? I mean, I think Alex and I kind of had our shock and awe picks there at wide receiver. I think Christian Watson to Tennessee, right? Another wide receiver, right? I think there's a possibility that Tennessee's probably looking in a slightly different direction there. But they're still all positions of need. Like, yes, we might be reaching for certain guys, as NFL teams do towards the end of the draft, but all these are positions of need. All these guys can come into the respective teams that we've assigned them to and not only compete, but start come day one for a lot of these guys. So I like our draft board. I like our logic and the homework we did behind it. And now it's just getting to Thursday so we can tout that, hey, we went 32 for 32.
Absolutely.
I think the one thing I just to add on, I think the one thing that we had in common with Mach 1.0 and Mach 2.0, and the one that I would say, look, if you can pick one player you know is going to go to one team, Nakobe Dean to the Patriots, and that sucks for the rest of the NFL.
Yeah, Josh Allen's not going to like that.
That one's gonna be rough for everybody in the AFC East.
Yeah. And I a lot of folks have been talking and making a lot of noise about potential trades and all that. I don't think we're going to see a lot of what we've seen in the years past, where you see, guys moving up into the 10, picks 10 through 15, a lot of that. I don't see that necessarily happening here. I think where you're going to see that is potentially down here in the very back of this draft. I could see Green Bay absolutely trying to move out of that pick at 28. Kansas City trying to move it out of either one of their first round picks there. Cincinnati's another team that could be looking to move back on that and acquire some more capital, because this draft, unlike a lot of others, there is an insane amount of talent that can be had in the second and third round. So day 2 is a very, very rich environment for this for players in this draft, especially for teams needing depth or needing to potentially fill some holes here. So that's where I could see one of these quarterback needy teams moving up and trying to move up in there and take one of the quarterbacks there, whether it's a Desmond Ridder or somebody like that, there towards the very end of the draft there. So cool. Well, guys, that does wrap it up. Any final thoughts out there for the listeners and viewers?
Get ready for draft day, right? We're excited. We're ready for this. So kind of get through the draft, do a quick recap, and then we get into our fun stuff, right? We're able to start doing some of these team breakdowns that we keep touting and really jump into, our fun time of preseason, right? And now that draft's over, it's all preseason work from here on out. So I'm loving this time of year.
Yeah, and everybody have fun and enjoy the Thursday special presentation of the Good Old Boys Fantasy Football Podcast on draft night. I will not be joining, as I will be celebrating another trip around the sun. So unfortunately, as much as I love hanging out with you guys and spending time with all of you, I will be doing other things to celebrate what some might say was the greatest day in mankind history. So that'll be fun. And it's not because it'll be the draft.
Happy
Alex,
birthday.
Thanks,
exactly.
guys. Appreciate
Happy birthday. Happy birthday. You know what? If you were here, I would have made a cake and we would have presented it there and all of that stuff.
Yeah. So great.
I'm just gonna let you know you're missing out on some cake. Okay.
Okay. Well, thanks.
All right. All righty, guys. Well, that's going to wrap it up. That's going to do it for us. Like they've said, make sure that you're tuning in on Thursday, April 28th, starting at 7:45 p.m. Eastern. You can find that going on Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, all of those places that we're doing the live simulcast there with amazing special guests and lots of fun going on with this draft. And of course, we'll be back next Tuesday for y'all and start getting into some of those team breakdowns. He's Kevin. He's Alex. I'm Derek. Have a good one. Be safe.